Oregon's defense has what you might call high-class problems.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Jam-packed today on a Monday, as you might expect. Oregon against the top 10 in college football, the return game, fall camp's underway. So many thoughts coming on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Oregon's defense, which does feature Ashton Porter, by the way, and I don't know who isn't a big fan of Ashton Porter. After the first episode of Under Construction, there were some gut-wrenching moments, and I applaud the guys for being able to share that kind of stuff. It's really, really hard, but the first docuseries of Oregon's fall camp has been released. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. And Lanning did say after the first scrimmage last week, the defense got a little bit better of the offense. And that side of the ball with Ashton Porter and others has got high-class problems. Because they don't have like serious, fundamental, underlying structural issues. They really don't. The only teams that scored 30 or more points against Oregon's defense last year were playoff teams. And that's a legitimate point of evaluation for Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi, the defensive coordinator, is, hey, when you play the biggest games of the year, can your defense be the one that carries the day? So far in the Dan Lanning era, that hasn't usually been the case. Oregon's 4 best opponents last year all scored 30 or more. All right, things to improve upon. High-class problems. So last week I took a crack at Oregon's 2 deep on offense. Doesn't mean this is everyone that will see the field, particularly if injuries start to arise this year, but taking my best stab at it, I'm curious as to your guys' thoughts as well. I think there are a lot of things to like on this side of the ball because you have a mix of young, exciting talent with some key returning veterans who I've got a lot of trust in. There are certainly questions, mostly on the back end. I mostly have questions about the secondary, and I'm getting more and more excited with each passing day to watch them and see who pops, who looks good, and where Oregon can still find some areas of improvement. Because, of course, that Rose Bowl loss was marred by a bunch of chunk plays in the passing game. So 19 days as this show airs to Oregon football, and I think the defense will look like this. At the defensive end, I think you'll start with Tatum Tuioti, backed up by Ashton Porter, who, as I said, I can't say enough good things about. Is just such an awesome story. Grateful to him and to the Oregon creative department for allowing us to see that. But I think those are the two at the role that Jordan Birch had a year ago. Defensive tackle, I think you start Bear Alexander, backed up by Aiden Breland. Nose guard, I think you start Amari Washington, backed up by Terrence Green. At that other kind of defensive end, outside linebacker hybrid spot, I think you start Matayo Uiagalelei, backed up by Blake Purchase. I'm sure there are names not along that front 4 that some of you think will play. I understand that. They could have a role in some specialty packages. I think those are going to be the top 8 guys. So, going to the second level, this is the easiest spot to pick the starters. The rotation guys, a little bit tougher, but your Mike and money linebackers are going to be Bryce Boettcher and Devin Jackson, and I don't know what scenario would arise aside from an injury where that's not the case all season long. These guys are incredibly experienced. We know they can be productive. They're very talented. You know, Bryce told me back at Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas that Devin Jackson's still probably the fastest guy on the roster. That's saying something. He could be in for a super big year. And we know what Bryce Boettcher can do. He was Oregon's leading tackler last year. I think their backups are Jerry Mixon at the money spot behind Devin Jackson and backing up Bryce Boettcher. I'll be honest, I did my own version of drawing names out of a hat because I like all three of Kamar Mathuti, Dylan Williams, and Braden Platt. And I don't know that we've got enough information. Obviously, the coaches have more about who's going to be in that spot, but there's going to be a solid amount of play from young linebackers this year for this Oregon defense, and I'm definitely excited to watch that. And it's such a great situation to be in where you have a couple of really proven, talented veterans in front of them, and they kind of slowly work their way into the fold. And then if Jackson goes pro and Bryce is done after this season, if neither one is there, then you can work two guys into the fold who got a lot of snaps this year. So I'd expect Jerry Mixon probably to be the most snapped linebacker that's not Bryce or Devin Jackson, but maybe one of those young guys really works his way into the fold. Great opportunity there. At the free safety or the field safety spot, you're starting Dylan Thieneman. I think Peyton Woodyard's the backup. I haven't been impressed with what I've seen from him to this point. He's going into his second year. He did not have a good day in the spring game. It's just one day. But it looked a little bit too much to me like the safety play Oregon's had in the last couple of years. Definitely don't think that he starts at that spot. But I do wonder if that's a position that Trey McNutt can work his way into, or if he's a little bit more of your boundary safety, or what's traditionally been referred to as a strong safety. I think Kingston Lopa starts there, and Aaron Flowers is the backup. And I do legitimately wonder. McNutt's such a talented guy as a 5-star. We saw him make a great play in the spring game back in April. That's, of course, all we've seen. But until we get some more practice footage from under construction, we don't know exactly what these guys can bring to the table right now and how ready they are to play in their first year of college football. But mega talent, of course, there in Trey McNutt. So I think Thieneman and Lopa are your two starting safeties. And then it gets fun. Picking the starting corners and the nickel spot for the Ducks this year, very difficult. And a lot of different ways that this can go. This reminds me a lot of the wide receiver room. And ironic, of course, because these guys are all guarding one another pretty often, I would think, at practice all the time. I'm sticking to my long-held prediction here on the show of Ife Obadegwu's at one starting outside corner and the other one's Jaleel Florence. Whether or not they travel them to a side of the field and boundary. I almost said Beald and Foundry. That wouldn't have been good. Foundry's a word. Beald, on the other hand, is not. Ife and Jaleel, whether they stay left or right, field or boundary, don't know, but I have confidence in those two guys, especially Jaleel if he's back and fully healthy. Backed up, I think Theron Johnson, the Northwestern transfer who's got some experience, he could see the field a pretty good amount. It wouldn't shock me if he was a starter, but I'm sticking with Ife and Jaleel backed up by Theron and Sione Laulea, who could still have 2 years to play with the Ducks after spending some time at with a JUCO school. Came in last year, the year before, and really interesting prospect. At 6'3", long, can really, really run. Now the nickel position, again, got a mysterious element to it. I'm presuming the legal situation works itself out so that Dalen Austin can play. We don't know exactly what's going to happen on that front. I'm not going to predict or talk about it a bunch. We'll just wait and see. I think Dalen Austin could be the starting nickel. He's popped up, in two deep spots or special team situations over the last couple of years more than some other guys that could play. This could also be a Jaden Kennedy starting spot from Ole Miss, but I don't think I could, in good conscience, put together two deep and not put Naeem Offord on it, who, Tosh Lupoy said a while back in February, I think, that he's not going to move to safety, that they, recruited him to play corner, but that nickel is one of those spots potentially he could be in at. Most talented defensive back recruit on paper Oregon's ever had. I think he works his way into the fold. How much does he start this year? We'll see, but certainly an exciting player. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. But this group, regardless of how accurate or not I am with my 2 deep, Oregon should have a top 20 defense nationally. They should have one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. High class problems. And I can't wait to see Coach Lanning and everyone figure all of that out. So Oregon against the rest of the top 10. What does that actually look like? The Joe Moore Award, is that within reach? And much more on today's show. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should only be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you could save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. If you want to go to a concert, if you want to go to a college football game this year, you want to go to a comedy show, I've used Game Time for both of those things. The process worked out great. They've got everything that you want, great deals, you know what to expect. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, second segment sip out of the way, and back we go into the good old mailbag. So, by the way, I was out of town over the weekend, and Oregon didn't get any commits. What the heck, guys? I thought that's how this worked. Last time I went out of town, they went crazy. This time I went out of town, silence. Okay, fine. Anyway, one of my Locked On Ducks insiders out there sends in this question. Hot or not take? Texas is overrated at number one. They came in number one in the coaches poll. They struggled to beat Arizona State and were exposed by Ohio State. Let me come back to that one. Top 5. 1, Penn State. My man. Right there. Penn State number 1. Oh, I love it. 2, Ohio State. 3, Texas. 4, Georgia. 5, Clemson. 6, Oregon. 7, Notre Dame. 8, Alabama. 9, South Carolina. 10, Texas Tech. Ooh. You know, whoever you are out there, because I can't see the names of my Locked On Ducks insiders, you must listen to my college football show if you have Penn State at 1 and Texas Tech at 10, because, oh man. Woo. Texas Tech's my preseason number 1 team in my Big 12 power rankings. And Penn State is my preseason favorite in the Big 10, who I think is going 12-0. So, anyway, Texas overrated at number 1. They struggled to beat Arizona State. What is this Kenny Dillingham slander? And I will not stand for it for a single solitary moment. If, God forbid, the Danimal were to ever leave Oregon, under no circumstance would I want to try to get any candidate not named Kenny Dillingham before he'd probably turn us down to stay at his alma mater and Oregon would conduct a national search. Let's not entertain that thought because I don't think that's happening, just hypothetically speaking. But Dillingham's the man. That Arizona State team was legitimately good. I mean, they trounced Iowa State, a good team, in the Big 12 championship game. And then they went toe-to-toe with Texas. And by the way, Arizona State played a lot better with the same amount of layoff than Oregon did. And so then to say Texas was exposed by Ohio State, Texas was down 14-7 at the half. We all would have taken 14-7 at the half, winning or losing, compared to what actually happened. So, no, Texas's roster is very good. You can say you have more questions about Arch Manning than you do Drew Aller or Cade Klubnik at Clemson. You have Clemson too low at 5, by the way. But most people have Clemson too low, and that's okay. Clemson is really, really good. So, yeah, I mean, I'll translate this into a Spencer's scale of agreement. Oregon at 6, I think is fine. I don't think I'd put Oregon higher than 6. I definitely would not put them outside of the top 10. I think that would be disrespectful and ridiculous, frankly, with the amount of talent they have. They just have to figure out how to get the young talent to play together, of course. But, no, Texas overrated at number 1. Not extensively. Yeah, I'll go with 3 since that's where you put Texas in your top 10. But one more take I wanted to get on Oregon in relation to the top 10 in college football, who's likely to be among the 10 best teams. There's not a team on paper, and this is the same kind of discussion we had last year, and then Ohio State got really hot. But on paper going into this year, there is not a world beater that I don't think Oregon, if they play their best, can go toe-to-toe with. That just often comes down to situational football. I lean towards the veteran teams like Penn State, who I think beats Ohio State on their home field this year, or Clemson, or it kind of applies to Texas because Arch is kind of a veteran, kind of not. Watch out for Alabama, which is a crazy thing to say, but like I think on paper they should be ranked behind Oregon, but watch out for Alabama. So another Locked On Ducks insider says for the SSA, that's Spencer Scale of Agreement, of course, the offensive line gets the Joe Moore Award, not just nominated, wins. This is so tough. And I put this next to the other question because you have to ponder the rest of college football. Okay, let's make something clear. I like Oregon's offensive line a lot. I think it's one of the top 3 or 4 units in the Big Ten. I don't expect them to have the same number of troubles they did early in the season last year. Even though they're working in Dante Moore at quarterback, that could lead to a couple problems, sure. Last year was an abject disaster up front through 2 weeks. I literally cannot imagine a stretch, not just against those two caliber of opponents in FCS and a group of 5, but just in general. I don't know the next time we'll see Oregon get sacked 7 times in 2 weeks. That was insane, legitimately insane. I don't think that's going to happen again until you have more questions at center like they did early last year. But could they win? The problem that I have with this, not that Isaiah World's projected to be a first-round pick, Poncho could be an NFL draft pick, Emmanuel Prenon and Matthew Bedford, I think just at least based on their size could get drafted. We'll see, who ends up starting at right tackle, and I feel good about either option, frankly, whether it's Alex Harkey or Janoris Wilson. There are 2 offensive lines in particular. Penn State's going to have a great offensive line. Notre Dame's going to have a really good offensive line. But I mean, Texas, for instance, has got legitimate questions along their offensive line because they just lost Kelvin. Was it Kelvin Banks? Yeah, I think they just lost one-time Oregon commit Kelvin Banks to the NFL amongst some other guys. So Oregon's not the only team with turnover up front. I think the unit's really good. So I'll go with a 4.5 on this. I think it's less likely than it is likely. So it goes just below the 5 where I'd say it's a toss-up. There are a lot of hurdles there. Mostly, watch for Notre Dame's offensive line. Their center last year. Notre Dame was really good in the trenches. Really, really good. The guy who started for them at center was actually going to be their backup. He's now at Indiana and is going to start for the Hoosiers, who I don't think are a playoff team, but are a playoff caliber-ish team going into 2025. He transferred because he wasn't going to start, and there were 2 guys like that. They had a kind of an exodus along the offensive line, and it's because it was guys who started last year who knew they weren't going to play this year because the guys whose roles they took are coming back healthy. So Notre Dame could be filthy good on the O-line. So I'll go 4.5. That's not the hottest take. I mean, Alik Terry's put together back-to-back Joe Moore Award finalist offensive lines. They haven't won the award. So I can see it if they really, really pop off. They've got 2 to 3 NFL guys, but the other lines in college, there are some really, really good ones. But do I think they have one of the 10 best? I'd have to evaluate that more closely. But Oregon's got one of the 10 to 15 best offensive lines in college football. They'll probably be a finalist inside the top 12, maybe in the top 8. So this one from Srajala42. This is my hot take for Oregon football. I don't think it's talent anymore that's holding us back from a natty. I think it's coaching inexperience on the part of Dan Lanning. Dan's a fantastic recruiter. I think it'll come down to his own as a head coach. But I remember reading that he said after the Ohio State game, they thought they were just going to do the same thing, and that made me furious. I'm still happy we have him as a coach. I don't want to be rid of him. Feel free to rate this on your scale of agreement if you want. Well, I will. That's why I'm bringing it up on the show. Last year's team, I do believe, was good enough to win the national championship, talent-wise. That doesn't mean they were talented enough at every single spot. Safety was, of course, a giant weakness. We're seeing them attack that on the recruiting trail in a way we've never seen Oregon do it before. That is not by accident. The rest of that roster, though, I think Nico Reed's going to make an NFL roster this year. I don't know about Jabbar Muhammad, but at the very least, he was a plus corner in college football last season. You had Bosso's an NFL linebacker. Boettcher and Jackson could both be NFL linebackers. You had 3 draft picks along the defensive line, plus a future 4th one in Matayo. Amari Washington could be a future NFL draft pick and was the number 3 defensive tackle. Like, that team was stupidly talented. You had Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart at receiver, both NFL draft picks. Stewart will be. Tez, of course, already has been. Like, 3rd-round quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, which was overdrafting him, but, he's good enough to get drafted, of course. Frankly, I've said it for a long time, and Dan Lanning has said it too. They got outcoached in that game, just flat out. They got outcoached, and unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles, and it got ugly really, really fast. I don't think it's entirely... Like, Ohio State still had a more talented roster. Like, they had a couple more guys get drafted, and just in a couple spots, really. Like, Jeremiah Smith was the best player on the field. Caleb Downs, best player on the field. Like, I'll go with a 7 on this. Like, I don't think the talent is, like, way... No, I'm going to up it. I'm going with an 8. I'm going to go with an 8. The reason it's not a 10 is there's still a couple areas where you look and go, okay, Oregon's got to be better there. Or, yeah, that's not quite where you need it to be. But last year, a great shot to win a national championship was definitely more about coaching the talent. So, yeah, I'll give that one an 8. It's hard to get a high number on the Spencer scale of agreement, as my everydayers know. So that's a good take. 3 things to wrap today's show. Return men that I'm excited about. The Oregon State game. And yes, more trivia. All right, let's start with special teams. Joe Lorig, after practice recently, was asked about guys that are getting reps, could be returners this year. And let me know if any of these names stand out for you. Noah Whittington, Jaden Lamar, De'Aaron Hill, DeCorian Moore. Oh, look at that. That could be fun. So, Oregon's kick return game last year, I think the last time when Whittington took that kick to the house that Lamar, of course, headily picked up when he dropped it before the 1 yard line, or before the goal line, rather, at the 1 yard line. When he took that to the house, I believe the previous kick return for a touchdown Oregon had was like 2019 against USC. There might be one in there that I'm forgetting. Oh, Mikael Wright might have had one 2021 against Oregon State in the Civil War game in Corvallis, or in Eugene. It was at Autzen. So, yeah, I think that might have been the last time. It's not like there are programs out there getting one every other week, but it had been a little while. I like Whittington in the return game. He's solid. Jaden Lamar's fine. Nothing special. I mean, he's kind of a do-everything sort of player. I don't know that he'll ever be a, feature back or primary guy in the Oregon offense. De'Aaron Hill and DeCorian Moore's name getting thrown out there by the special teams coach, that's got to excite you a little bit. Because these are both freshmen who have got explosive speed. I would love to see DeCorian back there just because he's so jitterbuggish. He accelerates, stops, and starts like no freshman I think we've really seen in an Oregon uniform since DeAnthony Thomas around that time. I mean, Charles Nelson maybe. I don't know if Charles Nelson first popped when he was a sophomore at Oregon or not. Let's see. I want to look that up real quick. But love watching Charles Nelson in the return game. But I'm always here for those sorts of explosive guys. Oh, yeah, 2014 was his first year. So, yeah, he did. Charles Nelson was there. But 2015, I felt like, is when Nelson started to make some more explosive plays. And 2016 as well. And it wasn't his fault, but that was when things, of course, went a little bit downhill. So, that was just a note that I picked up, in the spring interviews or the fall camp interviews that have been going around. As he was like, oh, DeCorian Moore. I tell you what, on August 30th at Autzen Stadium, DeCorian Moore's first catch, if it's 15 yards or more, that stadium might erupt. It could absolutely erupt. So I'm here for that. I'm definitely here for that. Something else that I am here for. Oregon has canceled a 3-game series with Utah State for 2027, 28, and 29. Now, at this moment, I don't think Oregon will play Oregon State in 2026. Oregon's current non-conference opponents that year are Portland State, at Oklahoma State in the return trip, and Boise State. And I would rather play Oregon State than Boise for historical reasons. But if there's just a 1-year gap, I suppose I can live with that. I'm a traditionalist. Some people are not. I am in this camp. I want to play Oregon State every single year. There are advantages that go both ways. And I just don't want to go through a college football season where Oregon doesn't play Oregon State. We might have to in 2026. But Utah State's going to be a part of the New World Pac-12. So from a conference caliber standpoint, it would make a lot of sense to remove one and insert another. Oregon was actually going to go to Logan. There's a part of me that's disappointed because I live in the same state as Utah State, of course, for most of the year. And there's a decent chance I would have been able to go to that game and see Oregon play live. That would have been cool. But I would much rather Oregon play Oregon State. So this hasn't been officially scheduled. John Canzano's done some reporting on this about, conversations that have been had behind the scenes and, that are ongoing. There's not, a public back and forth or anything like that. But conversations are being had to keep the rivalry going. I am a fan. Oregon State should definitely want to keep doing it because there's really only upside for them. There isn't a true downside for Oregon. Yeah, there's a downside, but I do think there's a real benefit, not the least of which is it's either a home game or a 45-minute drive or so from Corvallis to Eugene, whatever it is. And that's a lot easier than going, traveling the Big Ten is tough. So, yeah, I'm a fan. Trivia to wrap today's show. That was probably on Thursday's show. It was probably the longest I've ever spent trying to answer a trivia question. I knew that Troy Dye in my head was not correct because I know I've seen him play in the NFL. I just couldn't get to another name. And this happens to me all the time when I watch Jeopardy. And it's a very large, I've seen Jeopardy contestants talk about this before. Something pops in your head and then you get kind of stuck on it and you just keep coming back to it and you can't think of another name. So the 4-year defensive starter who was twice named honorable mention by Pac-12 coaches, once second team by the AP, did not play in the NFL after being signed as an undrafted rookie free agent by the Vikings in 2021, Jordan Scott, not Troy Dye, shout leader and Oregon legend himself. So I'm disappointed I couldn't get that one. It was very gettable. That was not outside of my scope of Oregon football consumption in my life. Like that was a name. I just couldn't come up with it. Trivia is tough. So let's do it. 2 for today that came across my preparation for the show. Jeremy sends this one in. This might be an easy one, but it's something I just noticed myself. So trivia for you, Spence. Oregon has nearly identical records against our two main rivals since 2000. One Oregon is 17-7 against, and the other 17-8. Which rival is which, and can you tell me why there's a 1-game disparity? Bonus question for the heck of it. If we'd played that extra game versus the former, do you think they would have won and made those records identical? Hypothetical, just playing the numbers, the biggest rivals here have got to be Oregon State and Washington. So historically, over the last 25 years, I'll go with, Oregon would have won if the extra game had been played. Who would they not have played, though? Who would they not have played? That's crazy that the rival is, the record is darn near identical. And of course, I just have to, let's see, Oregon lost to Washington 2023, 2023 again, 2022, 2017, 2016. There were probably a couple times early on. Oregon State, you've got 2022, you've got 2016, you've got 2008, No, 7. 2007. Then there were more back and forths in the early on. Which one is which? I've got a 50-50 chance, presuming that you, Jeremy, are in agreement with me that Oregon's two main rivals are Oregon State and Washington. I mean, they have to be. And it's, in my view, Washington first, Oregon State second. But who would they not have put? I don't think there's been an interruption in the Oregon State series in a long time. But when would there have been a disruption in the Washington series? I'm going to go with Oregon 17-8 against Oregon State and 17-7 against Washington. I don't know why there's a one-game disparity. I was just thinking about, like, were games taken away for like an NCAA sanction or something? I don't know. Sometimes those rivalry games don't get played, like we're about to have with Oregon State next year, but Oregon will play Washington, of course. And Oregon played Oregon State last year, and they played Oregon State in 2023 because they're in the Pac-12. Oh. Wait. I might be getting this. Oregon did not play Washington during COVID because Washington had a COVID outbreak on their team. But did they play Oregon State that year? Yeah. I think so. Oh gosh, that season was so wild and weird. Did they play Oregon State? No, I feel like they didn't play Oregon State that year. No, maybe they did. Oh no, they did. They did. Yeah, in the weird fog game. Yeah, okay. So if there's one less game, that means Oregon State is 17-8, Washington 17-7, and and COVID is the reason why. I think that's correct. Oh boy, I might be really proud of myself for that. There's another one that came in, but that was enough time on one question, so we'll save that for tomorrow. So, I love the trivia questions, love the mailbag, Spencer scale of agreement. Keep it going. 19 days as this show airs to Oregon football. Can't wait. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.